Hello everybody, my name is Leah and this is my YouTube channel, Nerd Girl Power. And get in, loser, because today we are going to discuss the 1990 It miniseries starring Tim Curry and based on the novel It by Stephen King. So, like I discussed in the previous video, I was 12 years old when the It miniseries came out and I watched it on television. And at the time, I thought that that was the greatest thing I had ever seen on television. To 12-year-old me, it was just straight flames. I loved it. And it inspired me to read the book and to become a fan of horror and a fan of Stephen King. And after I read the novel, I still enjoyed the miniseries, although I realized that a lot had been changed from that miniseries. Because we needed to take a 1,000-page novel and fit it into a 3-hour ABC 2-night miniseries event. So, and over the years, I've watched the miniseries periodically, and I've had some mixed feelings about it. And until recently, I had actually not watched it in, I would say, at least 12, maybe even 13 years. But a couple of weeks ago, I decided to watch it again for nostalgia purposes, take a trip down memory lane, and also to see what holds up and what doesn't. And I still have some mixed feelings. There's a lot of things that don't work for me in this adaptation, but there's actually a lot of things that I really like, and some that I even love, and some that just I thought worked really well. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And before I forget, here's my little mascot here, my It pop figure, Tim Curry Pennywise pop figure. This is really the only piece of merchandise I have from the 1990 It miniseries, although I hope to change that soon. Hope to find a few more pieces to add to my collection. But here he is, Pennywise. I'm just going to have him take a seat right here next to me while we discuss this. And to recap, the miniseries tells a story of a group of 7 misfit children who band together as children to seek protection from the local bullies and also to battle the monster that disguises itself as a clown that's been terrorizing their town in 30-year cycles. And they live, of course, in the very famous town of Derry, Maine. And then they reband together as adults 30 years later. In 1960s, when they're children, they reband together in 1990 as adults to fight the monster again. And guys, from this point forward, I will be spoiling parts of the miniseries. So if you have not seen the miniseries and you make your way onto this channel, that is something to keep in mind. So, like I said before, there's mixed feelings on this miniseries. Some of it works for me, some of it doesn't, and there's some parts that I even love. Or at least I really like. So, let's talk first about what didn't work. And one of the major biggies for me was the method of the storytelling, because the first part consists of flashbacks to the adults as children, and I found that awkward. The two halves, for me, they didn't mesh together very well. I think that if the first part had just left the adults out entirely, like Andy Muschietti's 2017 adaptation, had left the adults out entirely and just focused on the kids, I think that would have been a bit better, and maybe the two halves would have meshed together a little bit better. Another thing that I've had issue with is the casting, and this is for some of the adults. In particular, I have issues with Richard Thomas, who played adult Bill Denbrough, and the actor who played Eddie Krassback, Bill and Eddie as adults. I don't think either of those were very good choices, especially Richard Thomas with that ponytail. And like I said, I know it was 1990, but wow, that was just, he just wasn't Bill Denbrough to me. I'm not really sure why he was chosen for that part. I also had issues with how Beverly Marsh's adult character was written, because I see her as a strong woman, but she mostly in the miniseries comes off as neurotic. And I think this is a writing issue, not necessarily an acting issue, because I do think Annette O'Toole did a good job with what she was given. But I can't say that I care for the treatment of adult Bev. It didn't work for me. And let's talk about what I do like, because there's a few things that I actually really like and some that I even love. And one of the things that I love is the casting of the children. In particular, Brandon Crane as Ben Hanscom. Ben is the overweight member of the Losers Club. And he's new in town, so that's the reason why he's a target of bullies. But how Brandon Crane portrays him, it's just so sweet and genuine. And every time I see him, I want to give him a big hug. And the chemistry between, Brandon Crane and Emily Perkins, aka Ben Hanscom, and Beverly Marsh. Beverly is the sole female member of the Losers Club, and she's a loser because she's poor and also abused by her father. And we're going to talk about her in a minute. But just the chemistry those two had, it's just so sweet. Oh, and your hair is winter fire. January embers. Sorry about that. It's an interruption for some reason. But, where was I? Okay, we were talking about Ben Hanscom or Brandon Crane. But yeah, whenever I saw him on screen, or whenever I see him on screen, I just want to give him a big hug, because him and Beverly are just so sweet. And when Ben tells Bev that she's no longer alone, or she's not alone anymore, and how he looks at her, I still tear up when I see it, even as an adult. And we have Emily Perkins as child Beverly Marsh, and I love how she interpreted that character. I love her portrayal. Bev is poor, so that makes her a loser, but she also is being abused by her father. And the miniseries, it doesn't really delve into that very much. It leaves a lot to the imagination, and like I said, it was made in 1990, so they were limited in what they could and couldn't show on screen. So when you see Bev's father on screen, you just kind of think that he's mean. But with how Emily Perkins was able to come across, you know that there's more than that, and that he's abusive, and there's just not right between her and her father. And Beverly, she knows that the world just really kind of doesn't want her, doesn't really give a crap about her either way. But Emily is able to portray this character in a way where you feel for her, but you never pity her. You're on her side, and you root for her, and you want her to succeed. And you root for her and Ben to end up together, which of course they do at the end. So that I really like the kids. That might be one of my favorite parts to the series. I also enjoyed some of the practical effects of the miniseries. We won't talk about that dollar store spider at the end, because that was not one of the ones I enjoyed. I don't know what they were thinking in that, but oh boy, yeah, that was just that was awful. But when the kids go into the sewers and they're being chased by the bullies, it shows Belch, one of the bullies. Pennywise the clown gets him, and Belch gets sucked into that pipe with the deadlights. And this is all practical effects, no CGI, because it's 1990. But it was awesome. I loved it. That's one of the best use of practical effects I've ever seen, I think, in anything, not just, within this series. So I thought that was a good job. Another thing that I enjoyed was the casting of Harry Anderson as adult Richie Tozier. And of course, Richie had to be edited from how he was in the book. But he's, as a child, Richie is a smartass. His mouth gets him in trouble. They call him Trash Mouth. Beep Beep Richie is said pretty often. So he doesn't really, know how to focus himself. And as an adult, he finds an outlet in comedy. And of course, Harry Anderson is one of the best comedians ever. Was one of the funniest guys on television. Again, rest in peace, because we lost him way too soon. And I liked what he brought to that character and made Richie, pretty believable and is somebody that you liked and you wanted to root for. There's also a couple of scenes in this miniseries that I think stand out. The first one was the beginning of the miniseries, where the little girl's out playing in the yard and Pennywise gets her. And they didn't really show anything because, again, they couldn't, because it was 1990 ABC television, so they were limited again. But how they show the sheets blowing in the wind, and then her mother runs out calling her name, because I think at that point she knows something's happened to her daughter, and the tricycle is upside down, the wheels are spinning, and then they stop. So you know what's happened, and it's not good. But there's no blood and guts or anything, but this was still really, really creepy, and I even find it really, really creepy to this day. The other scene that sticks out to me is the beginning of the story for the Losers Club, aka the death of Georgie Dembro. And that was Bill Dembro's brother. And Georgie is murdered by Pennywise. And Jonathan Brandis plays Bill. And the chemistry that Jonathan Brandis and the child actor who played Georgie, it was believable. You could believe that they were brothers, fooling around, having a good time. Bill makes that boat out of newspaper for Georgie, sends him outside, and that's the last he ever sees of him. Georgie sails his boat, loses it in the sewers, but runs into Pennywise. And Pennywise tears his arm off, and it's just the end for Georgie. And we're reminded of what the driving force is in this story, and that's the murder of Georgie. And Bill takes responsibility for that murder, even as a child, and it never really leaves his mind. And Jonathan Brandis does a good job, portraying all that and being the group's leader. And we want him to get closure. We want him to get his revenge against Pennywise, because Pennywise messed with the wrong child in going after Georgie. And we want him to get his just desserts. So I love that. All right, now let's talk about Tim Curry's Pennywise the Clown. And you're probably wondering why I haven't gone there yet. Well, I decided to save the best for last, because Tim Curry as Pennywise the Clown, it's my favorite part of this miniseries. I love Tim Curry's performance. It is so good. There is a reason why he's the template for scary clowns. One moment, he's charming, just like he was with Georgie. I mean, if I was Georgie and someone like that started talking to me with the sewers, I probably would have gone with him, and I'd wanted to see that floating circus, because Tim Curry is charming. And then, just like that, he can swap over to being homicidal. And that's, I can't come up with words to describe it. There's a reason why, if I have nightmares about Pennywise the Clown, it's Tim Curry's Pennywise. When I read the book, it's Tim Curry's Pennywise that, gets in my head. That's what I think of when I read the book. And his performance is so iconic and just that good. His voice, the way he laughs, and his smile. And this is all done, remember, with makeup, practical effects and just Tim Curry being scary, because it was 1990. We didn't have CGI or anything, so we had to make do with, what we had. And luckily, we had an actor like Tim Curry to make this miniseries memorable. He's easily my favorite part of the miniseries. There's other performances that I like or even love, but none measure up to Tim Curry's performance as Pennywise. And it's awesome. And I think that he will continue to inspire terror in us for, I don't know how long, probably until the end of time, because he is just that good in this miniseries. So, I gotta sign off for today, guys. I could probably talk a whole lot more about this, but I gotta sign off for today. So I will see you guys next week. And until then, may your days be long upon the earth.